So, David, the largest budget in Ontario history was announced earlier today at $186.1 billion. Your thoughts on your government's budget today?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's obviously it's critical in the very difficult time that we're in right now that we continue to protect people's health and the health of our economy. So having said that, we've made significant investments, and it's important, I think, for us both and me in particular to really, as our local rep, explain what that means for us here locally. Can I just dive in, or?
Absolutely. I was going to leave it to you. So, because that's really what people, we throw out the big numbers, David, $186.1 billion spending budget, up from last year at 148. The deficit is 33.1 billion, down from 38.5 last year. But what people really want to know with budgets like these is how does it affect them, or how will it help them in the long run?
So for people who just want to get jabs in arms, because vaccine is number one on their minds, $1 billion in additional dollars to support vaccine rollout. We know that capacity is there at the Cobourg CCC. They can do up to 1,000 a day, but they just don't have enough vaccines. At Norwood today, they ran out of vaccines yesterday, early in the afternoon, just because they didn't have enough vaccines. So we know there's a light on the horizon. The federal government are bringing in more vaccines to the province of Ontario. But for the husband and wife, that it was a tale of two different couples. When the husband and wife from Cobourg that drove up to Norwood to get their appointment today, I saw them walk in nervous, perhaps scared, which symbolizes the past number of months where they probably haven't had the interactions with their loved ones that they're used to. Seeing them leave out of the corner of my eye, and seeing the husband lean in and kiss his wife and skip out of there. That's what this is about. That's why we're investing $1 billion. That's why we're expanding PPE for our frontline heroes who are working double duty, for the nurses that were, doing their day jobs with family health teams, but then also administering vaccines at these clinics. We thank you as a government. We're going to make sure you're protected. And for the people who want to get jabs in arms, we're going to make sure we're ready to do that. For long-term care, it's another big piece. You've joined us, you've been around to see the shovels in the ground from Golden Plough to Cobourg. That's a historic investment, but we're investing an additional $933 million. What does that mean locally? That means that we've been able to accelerate the build at Golden Plough. That means that for a lot of these projects, we've been able to expand the number of new beds. So for that senior or for that family member that are thinking of putting their loved one into a ward-style 4-room, that was the last decade. Under Premier Ford and our government, it's private and semi-private rooms, meaning you're going to have the dignity of living in a modern and safe space. That means supporting a disproportionately double the number of beds for non-for-profit homes, as per the investment in this budget and the recent announcement that we've made. That also means supporting training 27,000 healthcare professionals for the young boy or girl, or for the parent watching at home, for the young woman. And I say young because boy, did she ever sound it. She was in her 50s, 60s, looking to pivot into becoming a PSW. Thanks to the government of Ontario, she's getting free PSW training at any one of our publicly assisted colleges or private career colleges to assist her into training to become a PSW. And those courses traditionally are upwards of $5,000. That's now free. That's part of our commitment to training 27,000 healthcare professionals. And for the nurse, worried at Loyalist about the former program where they had to partner and you'd lose them to St. Catharines for the partnership with the university. Those days are done. Those archaic days under Premier Wynne are gone. We're now giving standalone nursing for the rural nurse in rural Ontario that wants to stay here and practice his or her profession here. They can now do that. And that's part of our commitment for 4 hours of direct care. As much as you and I would like it, we don't live in, we're not Dorothy. We can't click our heels together and have 27,000 healthcare professionals show up tomorrow for the Trekkies beam down. That's not going to happen. We need to train them. And we've made significant investments to do that and to train 27,000 healthcare professionals. And that's going to happen. And that will make Ontario a leader in 4 hours of minimum 4 hours of direct care for our loved ones. So that's sort of some of our healthcare stuff, Mark. For people or for our hospitals, sorry, I'm not yet quite done, hospitals. Historic investment into hospitals. This is a significant investment of over $5 billion into our hospital system. And that's meant historic investments in our hospitals. And so what does that mean? That means that, an NHH at Campbellford that was on life support, we increased their medium and small size hospitals funding formula. We fixed the funding formula to increase their funding. But also, what we've done is we've invested $1.8 billion to support them with canceled surgery so that we can accelerate our surgical delivery, so that we can support hospitals with lost revenue over this difficult time. That's going to mean, Mark, that you and I will likely be connecting into the spring and summer to make announcements for what that means for NHH and Campbellford, as we're still working with our hospitals and their finance departments and their administration to determine what their backlogs look like. But the money's there, we're ready to go. It's literally standing there waiting to get out to our hospitals and to support our loved ones in getting the care that they deserve. But it's not just about hospitals. It's about getting care in your home when and where you need it. So community paramedicine, we've expanded that to 33 additional communities. For folks in Northumberland, we're lucky. We were one of the early adopters of community paramedicine here, supported by the government of Ontario. That means you can get the support in the comfort of your own home. For the folks in Cobourg, wondering, we have to drive into Cobourg. No, you don't. You now have a rural health hub that's been launched in Cobourg, Ontario. That's, again, part of our strategy to getting the best patient-centered care when and where you need it. And so as we look now to additional supports, there's supports for those fleeing domestic violence. That's been the probably the most sobering statistic in COVID-19. So we've invested another over $175 million to support domestic violence and women fleeing that. And additional, we know that this has disproportionately affected women, COVID-19, in seeing people going back to work. Women are lagging behind, and it's not been fair. So we're targeting training for women in this budget to support them, for minorities and other communities that have been affected by this, and for families, for every family, watching this, Mark. This means that for the support program for families, for example, we're doubling the support for families program. And that's meant that for a traditional family, we know that benefited from the family tax credit through COVID, the COVID child benefit, which totaled $1.8 billion up to March. We're doubling it, which means that $400 per child and $500 per child with special needs. So for a family of three, one of whom might have special needs, that means over $2,600 in total supports after the third round of payment. And for those looking to get back to the workforce, childcare is very expensive. We're proposing a 20% enhancement to the child care tax credit. And that's going to increase supports from $1,200 to $1,500 on average, providing about $75 million in supports for over 300,000 families across the province of Ontario. And for those seniors looking to stay in place longer, again, that tax credit, the Premier joined me at Living Well in Cobourg to support with those ramps to get in and out of your house, to support with the elevation, the lifts to go from first to second floor. 20% tax credit for all of those installing that. You'll get 20% back.
I'll jump in here, David, just to give you a little break here and to catch your breath, because I know there's lots to get through here with this budget, and there's lots of information to get. Obviously, in Northumberland, Peterborough South, David, we are a large tourist area, and there's many businesses over the last year that have suffered. What can you tell to those places like that run the bed and breakfasts, that run those tourist operations that no one has been able to come and see in the last year? What help is there for them? That's
a really good question. So the Ontario Small Business, this is a two-part answer. The Ontario Small Business Support Grant is being doubled. For everyone watching who said, hey, it was 10 days or less and I got my payment, or for those who said, I had a couple hiccups and bumps along the road and it took me a bit longer. And I did help some businesses. There were some challenges. Either you entered the bank information incorrectly, etc. We're doubling that. So you don't need to apply. whatever you got in round one, you're now going to get in round two. Just sit back and wait for that support to come to you, because we know small businesses have borne the brunt. They've disproportionately responded to the public health advice. They've made the difficult decisions to shutter their businesses to support and protect the health and well-being of us all. And so they deserve a government that's standing there to support them. And you're right, for some of those tourism businesses that were either feeling the extra pinch or that may have been left out of that Ontario Small Business Support Grant, we're providing an additional carve out of over $400 million to support the tourism sector with a dedicated tourism support grant there for them. And that's going to be really critical for our tourism sector. In addition, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything for you, but we're expanding the arts grant to support the arts sector. We're also the hospitality and culture sector, which has been hit hard, as I said, $400 million over the next 3 years. This builds on the previous investment of $225 million. So that's an additional $400 million to support the arts sector. And what does that mean? That means the Capitol Theatre, for example, they responded to the Resilient Communities Fund, and they received over $150,000 in supports. West Bend, I think to, Critical Mass, other groups like that, that's been supports there, and it's going to only grow. Furthermore, I think when we think of our tourism sector and how we can continue to grow, there's a new community building fund. So for all the youth, I think of our non-for-profit sports groups, the hockey leagues, the kids that want to get back. There's a new community building fund, over $105 million, of which $50 million is going to be invested in capital projects. So there's already exciting projects, Mark, that I'm well on my way to supporting right now locally, and I'm very excited for that. And, if we may just briefly pivot for jobs training, because that's been really key for those who've lost their job, up to $2,000 in supports, or 50% of eligible expenses. So for example, someone that is looking at upskilling, they're working a minimum wage job, or they're working at a restaurant, and they maybe want to take that next step. Their course costs approximately $4,000. They're going to get up to 50% of that course covered, $2,000 from the Government of Ontario, and $500 from the Canada Training benefit. So the Government of Ontario is picking up the disproportionate amount of money there, but it's critical because we got to make sure Ontario is a destination. Wherever you live in Ontario, you want a job, we want to make sure one's there for you. And if you want to transition and upskill, we want to make sure that you're able to do that in this great province.
David, what do you say to those individuals and people that are saying that this government is spending, use a phrase like a drunken sailor here, with the largest budget ever to be brought forward in this province?
Well, what I would say is let's look at how we're spending. You yourself just mentioned that our deficit has decreased and that we are on the right path and we're heading there. But let's look. Under the previous government, deficits increased because we were doubling funding on silos. We've embraced real community efforts. Community efforts are the reason we've stood up our mass vaccination sites. Community efforts, community-based decision is the reason that, before, when we were clogging our hospitals and folks had to drive long distances, well, today you got community paramedicine in this riding. You've got rural health hubs in this riding. So we understand that, look, after 611 net new beds built in long-term care, an increase from 2011 to 2018 of 1%, that's now increasing at a rate of 25% under this government with our commitment to build 30,000 new beds. We're already 20,000 beds along the way there. And we need to make those investments. But it's a transformational shift, Mark. And I think that people understand that, if you invest now, that pays dividends in the long run. And we've made smart investments, that are going to help people train. And when people are training, and when we're taking the burden off of our employers and off of our small businesses, and we're allowing them to grow and hire new people. I didn't mention our rural tax credit now, doubling that to 20%. So someone wants to set up shop at the cost of $250,000 to buy a building here, they're going to get $40,000 back. it's going to be an incentive to leave the GTA and come here. And with our investment in broadband, I don't think we touched on that yet, $4 billion investment, which stands in stark contrast to the 1.7 billion the feds committed, because we understand we need broadband here. That means that when those businesses are growing, they're paying taxes, and that's going to be brought right back in. And so the long-term fiscal outlook, and I apologize because the budget came out 49 minutes ago, so I'll do some more digging. But if you look at the broad strokes, the deficit is being reduced. Our long-term fiscal outlook is strong. I think we are on the trajectory heading in the right direction in this province.